Welcome to Movies and TVs on the Ball. My name is Steve-O, your host. And as you can hear, I sound like a vampire. Blah, 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 blah. Yes, I am in. With me is Jack-O-Lantern J.
Yes, it is I, Jack-O-Lantern J.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Movies and TV Shows on the Ball. It's Halloween time, and Jay and I have been kind of thinking about doing a bunch of Halloween movies, but we've just been so busy that we just kind of decided to get together and talk about a sequel. Because these days you gotta have a sequel. We're talking about Scream 2, which came out in 1997 and 1997, and
It was 1 year after Scream 1,
Scream
right?
1, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
just like in the movie.
Where it takes place 1 year.
Right.
And they probably and I bet you anything, they probably filmed them back to back. So, and I guess, and with the sixth Scream coming out, I thought we kind of could, like, do some sort of knock out some sort of Scream films and give you guys what you've always wanted, more terror in our lives. So Jay, before we start, how did you find out about Scream 2? Did you know about it, or?
I guess I probably vaguely knew about it growing up, but not real. I guess this is the first time I've seen it.
Okay.
So sort of, I guess my introduction to the Scream franchise was probably just seeing the mask in Halloween stores and then
Really
slowly
kind
making
of-
the connection
Yeah,
over time.
What
What about you? What was your first connection to Scream 2?
Scream 2, I really kind of knew of it. The sequel, I didn't know it came out actually that quick. I thought it came out a lot. I don't know, because when you're 8 years old, well, I was 9. Well, I was 8 when the first one came out, 9 when the second one came out. But your sense of time, it feels a lot longer,
Right. Yeah.
So it did feel like Scream 2 came out a lot longer than I thought it did.
Right. Yeah, that 1 year felt a lot longer.
Yeah, it did feel a lot longer, and you can kind of tell that there's more of a maturity with the characters, even. Well, not maturity, but they're written more of like they're not high school kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but like Scream, the franchise, it is kind of interesting because I'm really interested in seeing kind of where they're gonna go with in 6, because it's in New York. As long as it's not like Jason Takes Manhattan, where he spends half the time on a boat.
Wait, is there a Jason Takes Manhattan?
That's the Friday the 13th part 8. No.
Okay, see, that's another one where I've seen the first one, but none of
I've
the
got them all,
sequels.
so it's lying around. Anyway, so that was kind of my first introduction. Scream 2, to me, it didn't have that for me, like as a kid. It didn't have that punch as, I mean, it's still original. It's still it's fresh, but it didn't have that zazz like the first one, or like watching the second one. It's not a shitty sequel.
Right, I agree.
It's not like Scream 2 was like. It's not like Terminator and Terminator 2.
Right.
So Scream 2. So Scream 2 pretty much. What I like what they did. So Scream 2 was directed. Wes Craven came back to direct it. It starred Neve Campbell. This is a hi. I'm Troy McClure. You may remember me from such. I'm Neve Campbell. You may remember me from such film as she was in the Scream series. She was in Party of Five. She's been in episodes of House of Cards. I think she was in season 5 of House of Cards and season 6. She was in episodes of Mad Men. She did voice work for The Simpsons.
Oh.
She was in an episode of The Simpsons. She was recently she's on the television Peacock,
Okay.
the NBC streaming service,
Yeah.
is doing a television series based on Twisted Metal, the video
Oh
game. Remember
yes.
the Sweet Tooth video game?
Yeah, I do remember. I like the
And
video game. I don't know if it'd make a good TV show, but
and she was also in Skyscraper, and um, let's see, she was a voice of Kiara in Lion King 2.
Skyscraper, the one with like The Rock,
Uh,
where he. I was just trying to remember if I've seen that. I can't remember. Am I thinking of a different
no, it's a
movie?
different one.
Okay.
I know what you're thinking. No, yeah, Skyscraper with The Rock.
Okay.
Yeah,
I've
yeah,
seen
yeah.
that one.
Dwayne Johnson. I
Yeah.
forgot. No, that is The Rock. So she kind of comes back. I think this was her first sequel because it came out because Scream 2 came out right directly after Scream 1.
Right.
So they kind of rushed that. Then you had Courtney Cox. Courtney Cox was best known for her role in Friends. She played Monica Geller. She was in all Scream films, including the sixth one.
Okay.
So we'll get to see her a lot. She was in an episode of Modern Family. She was in 3,000 Miles to Graceland. Episodes of Seinfeld. She played Melissa in Ace Ventura, Pet Detective.
Okay.
She was like Ace's sort of like not girlfriend, but sort of like the girl that works for like who hires, because I think she works for the Miami Dolphins.
Oh right. Was this the Gale character?
Yeah, this is Gail.
Okay, gotcha.
Scream.
Okay.
Yeah. I gotta make sure. And then you had David Arquette as Dewey Riley, who was
Oh,
Deputy
the
Dewey.
cop from the
First one.
Yeah.
She was in Eight-Legged Freaks.
Ooh, okay, I've seen that one.
He was in Cougar Town. Or no, he produced that. Actor. He was in Eight-Legged Freaks. He was in Blackjack, the Jackie Ryan story. Let's see. Pee-wee's Big Holiday in 2016. She was in Scream. He was in all Scream films. He was in all 5 Scream films. I don't think he makes it to the 6th one.
Okay.
He was in episodes of My Name is Earl. You know him from films such as... he was in The Adventures of Shark Boy and Lava Girl. And he was in Muppets from Space. He played the evil guy who ran he's like, I'm putting you in a minute. He puts Rizzo.
Oh, he's one of the scientists?
He's a scientist.
Okay, yeah.
That he goes, and he tells him about the, he tells him about the maze, and he's like 3 feet from the 3 feet from the door, 2 feet from the corner, 3 feet from the door, and then there's a doorknob. But the thing about rats, they have no opposable thumb. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, that's a good one.
So he's back. Then you had, a lot of Heather Graham's in it. Roger Jackson,
Who's his
Graham.
character?
Heather Graham was Stab Casey. Was the girl that in the movie she plays in the.
Oh, she's the actor playing the first girl that got killed in the first movie.
Exactly.
Okay.
And she was in films such as she played Felicity Shagwell in Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me.
Okay.
She was in Lost in Space.
Gotcha.
The movie. She's been in Angie Tribeca.
When this movie came out, was she a bigger star?
Well, I
Back
think
then,
she
or-
like
I was wondering if they're going for like like you would like instantly recognize the cast of their sort of fake movie in the movie type
Well, she
deal.
was in Boogie Nights. Did you ever see
No,
that
I
movie?
haven't seen that.
She was in Swingers. I mean, she's kind of had like she was in Twin Peaks. Does that show remind
Okay,
you?
yeah, I've seen Twin
She was in
Peaks.
an episode of Twin Peaks. She was in Twins with Danny
Oh,
DeVito,
okay,
and
that's a great movie. I can't
they're
remember
working on
her
a
character
sequel to that film.
with
Called
Danny DeVito and Arnold
Eddie
Schwarzenegger.
Murphy as a they're calling it
Oh,
triplets.
okay, that could be
I
good.
don't know if that's ever going to come out, but then you had Omar Epps, who was the guy who gets killed at the beginning he gets stabbed in the ear. And
The initial actual killer.
after killing,
Yeah, in the bathroom. Yeah.
he was in. You probably know him from House MD.
No, but I'm sure other people will.
Yeah, and he was in Love and Basketball, Dracula 2000. Recently, he was in Fatal Affair, and he was in episodes of ER, to name a few. But that pretty much. I mean, the cast has got like some. We talked about Sarah Michelle Gellar.
Right. Yeah.
She's
Buffy
shows
stardom.
up,
Yeah.
and I think it came out back in '90. It came out right around the same time as maybe Buffy's season 1 to season 2 was going
Okay.
on. So that's pretty much. Then you had Levi Schreiber, who played Cotton Weary, who played Sabretooth
Oh yeah, Sabretooth.
in
Yeah.
X Men. He was also in. He was in a. She's in a show called. He was in Spotlights. This is Levi Schreiber. Up and Don't Look Up. He's recently did a movie. He was in a television called Donovan, and he was in Goon 2.
Is it a hockey movie?
Yeah, the hockey
Okay.
movie.
Well, I haven't seen it. I just assumed.
And he was in.
Is he
Oh.
actually Canadian
Um,
or something?
I don't know.
Or am I just
No, he
thinking?
was born in San Francisco.
Okay, I'm probably just thinking about
Somebody
Sabretooth.
else, somebody
No.
Sabretooth, this kid, yeah. But he back as
Smith
Cotton
movie.
Weary, and then you had, the thing about Scream was, or like the Scream in the '90s, or Scream films in the '90s, there were a lot of up and coming stars.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, aren't there always up and coming
well,
stars?
I mean, like ones that kind of, Courtney Cox kind of, when she was in Scream 1, what her character was a complete 180 from Monica from Friends.
is that Gail?
Yeah, that's
Okay,
Gail.
so I'm
Yeah,
bad at.
I
knowing that.
know. I'm trying
Okay.
to help you out. Here. So anyway, so Scream. Let's since we and then of course you have Roger, the voice, played by Roger Jackson. And Roger Jackson is best known for, other than the voice, he has done works in. He actually did the voice for the Scream television series that was on MTV.
I didn't know they had a TV show.
Yes, they did. But he's the voice of Mojo Jojo in Powerpuff Girls.
Okay.
I think he is. But he's done a lot of voice work. He was in. He did the voice work. He played a voice work for a stormtrooper in Star Wars: The Force Unleashed 2, and he was, I think, yeah, Mojo Jojo in Powerpuff Girls.
Okay.
So that's pretty much the cast that I'm gonna get into. Let's dive into the movie.
Okay.
So what I like about what they did with this movie is, so it's a year after the events of what happened. It's a year after the events of what's happened in Woodsboro.
Right.
And the way it opens up is, I like how it because the first film pretty much plays with the horror, like what's your favorite, scary movie, like the opening scene in Scream. It was sort of like she answers the phone. He tells them about Freddy Krueger, knives with fingers.
Yeah.
and basically how the first one was good and the rest of them suck and all
Uh,
that kind of stuff. But what they did in this one is we were introduced to Omar Epps and Jada Pinkett Smith,
right.
who
They're going to the movies
they're standing in line to go to the
to
movies.
go see Stab, right?
Stab, which is a not really a parody, but sort of I want to call it the movie with not the, yeah movie within the movie
Yeah, it's a movie about the first
movie.
movie, the
Yeah.
events of the first movie
So and that's
that
kind of
Gail wrote and
Gil wrote a book called or wrote I think wrote a
yeah, she wrote a
memoir
book and then that book got made into the Stab movie.
Stab movies and so
Right.
and like Stab and I think what Stab and so this is the first Stab film and so they're waiting in line at the movie theater and you've got Omar Epps from House and Jada Pinkett Smith.
And they can both get handed costumes. Right.
No, they get souvenirs,
Right.
souvenir masks for.
Right.
And what I like, but I like that scene is, I like how she's standing in line, and she's like going, I don't know, because I think they're all in college in this.
Right.
And she's like, I've got an exam to go to, and she says, this stuff is gonna be is always the same. It's she kind of tells them about the basically the um, kind of the same plot. It's about some white. She says something like, it's all about some white girl who can't. Basically, she does the same thing that she says the same lines that pretty much what's if you remember in Scream 1 where she gets the first phone call from Nev Campbell
Right.
to Nev Campbell is like, what's the point? She should go out the window, going out the front door instead of out the window, or out the stairs instead of, where she's like,
I guess I can't remember
Yeah,
the first movie, the details.
yeah,
of that.
She basically, she's like saying it's just some black, not black, but she's like some white woman that that is gonna get killed. Like she kind of tells you like it's the cliche. She basically tells
Okay.
them about the cliches of the horror, kind of the horror film in general.
Right.
And so what I like is that so they go into the theater, and the theater is like it's kind of that classic or nowadays classic look to the theater.
Right.
As they're given souvenirs for the Stab, which is basically a mask and the costume, and as they're walking into the theater, you can tell that it's a riot.
Right.
Or you want to kind of
People are just like up and about, and there's like throwing
there's
popcorn, and there's like flashing lights. It doesn't look like a very nice atmosphere to watch a movie in.
it is kind of that exciting.
It's very like disorienting.
It's
Somewhat.
very disorienting, but it's also kind of like sort of the look of kind of the way maybe not our generation exactly, but maybe the generation before us, the slight generation before us, because like when you look at Scream 1, it's the kids that grew up on the 80s and 90s or 80s slasher films.
Yeah.
And when you see it in Scream 2, where they go see Stab, you can kind of tell that everybody is, it's more of that excitement because they're all wearing masks. One guy's running up the aisle.
Yeah.
There's that the ushers are using a
They got like black lights going
lights and like what's it called? Oh, black lights and like the on a string.
on. Oh yeah, they have like a little like sort of like flying character on a string flying around. Yeah.
Yeah, and I like that because you kind of hype the movie up, and when when the movie, so you can kind of tell that when the movie starts, you know, we kind of see it's pretty much plays with the opening
Of the first movie,
of
yeah.
the first movie, and there's like a pool, and it's kind of a parody of it. Not a parody, but it's a satire. It's a satire of the movie.
Yeah, yeah, sort of making fun of itself some.
Yeah. So Jay, and I liked what they did is because like so we see Heather Graham, who plays the Sydney character,
Uh,
and you want to kind of what was your thoughts on like what do you think of the parody of the because I liked it.
oh, still okay. Still on the movie within the movie.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It sort of follows
Kind of the same
the
plots.
same plot. Yeah.
But I liked it how like everybody like she's got the popcorn and it does play that kind of like it it kind of puns it. It kind of puns it to be what it is or not what it is, but to about the
Right. Yeah.
you know. So anyway, so 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 they're watching the movie and they're and everybody's hooting, hollering, and like there's a scene where she goes to the shower, which kind of is kind of a hitch. It's kind of an homage to Hitchcock if you think of like the Psycho.
Okay. Yeah, it's another one I haven't seen, but
Psycho. But like she goes in the shower. But you know what I'm saying? Like she goes in the shower and so she gets a call, and I mean it plays out. So what I like about the scene is you can kind of see that Jada Pinkett Smith's character. So it's kind of like, why did you bring me here? And then she sort of like slowly gets into it.
I thought it was that she just didn't like horror movies.
She didn't like horror movies, but you can tell
that's why she was like saying like she didn't want to go.
She didn't want to go. She doesn't like to get scared, but you can tell. But it builds.
Yeah.
How she gets into it. So what I like is So what I mean by that is, she goes into the she's watching. So they're watching the movie, and she's like, she gets into it when she says like, "Don't go in there. Go,
Yeah.
And then, because she first says like, she kind of like feels like it's kind of completely stupid. This is ridiculous. And then she's like, oh, why don't you go get me, I need some money. It's like, why can't you use your money? It's like, because I'm going to go get some popcorn and something to drink. And so she does. And then she goes back in and he goes
use the bathroom. Right.
So anyway, so he goes to the bathroom, and while he's in the bathroom, she's watching it, and you can tell she slowly gets into it. She's like, "No, don't go in there. Don't go in there." And so he's in the bathroom. So he goes into the bathroom and he sees two men who are in ghost face masks urinating, or they're using the bathroom. And so he knocks on the door. There's like two other stalls.
Yeah, one's locked.
One's locked and one's open.
Uh-huh.
So I like what do you think of that scene? Because he goes in to the bathroom and he goes to take a leak and he listens to this whisper. He's like, pss, 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 pss. You don't really know what he's. I mean, I think I know what it says.
I can't remember. Something like die, 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 or mommy or something.
Mommy or something. It was it kind of plays onto that same kind of Friday the 13th.
Yeah, it's just sort of like a whisper, and he sort of leans in to hear what it says.
And then we see our first kill, where the ghost face takes the knife and stabs him in the ear through
it's the bathroom stall
wall.
Yeah.
And so it gets in his ear and he starts bleeding out. And what I like is when he does it, he pretty much starts bleeding from the mouth, and I guess he uh, no one kind of notices it because the guy that kills him, the killer, thinks that this is all, you know, there he kind of walks out,
Yeah, well, he
but
takes his jacket.
takes his jacket.
Right.
So then he takes his jacket, he goes in, and she's like into the theater. She she she's like Jada Pinkett Smith's watching the movie and kind of getting like she's into it. It's like, baby, you left. You know he's gonna get it. And what I like is he just sits down and
Uh
he's got the mask on. And as he's sitting down and has the mask on, um, he doesn't say anything.
right. Yeah.
And what I like, and everybody, and you can kind of tell that he just kind of sits there waiting for her to, um,
I guess. Well, then she just notices that he's covered in blood. I guess.
no, yeah, but but the way it works, the way it builds,
Uh,
is she's like, do you want some popcorn? And the ghost face shakes his hand, and then she's like, gets into it, and then he kind of basically stabs her
uh,
in stab movie. And what I like is she sort of, you know, she doesn't realize she's stabbed because she looks at her fingers,
I think she.
or she realizes or no, she. Oh, let me back up.
Uh,
She basically touches his fingers.
Yeah, he touches the jacket,
Touches the jacket,
which is covered in blood.
blood.
From yeah.
And then she kind of like, this is kind of weird. And then the blood starts dripping, and then he
Stabs her.
And then what I love is she's like, and like the whole crowd's going woo woo, and
Right.
and she's like bleeding, and she starts
Trying to get away.
and he chases her, stabs her again in the back, and then she crawls to the front of the screen,
Right.
yells out, and then kind of does this really poetic sort of Sleeping Beauty, Snow White.
Yeah.
She thuds and falls down on the ground, and then Scream 2.
Yeah.
What do you think? I mean, because like something about the Scream movies that there's something about the Scream movies that kind of they're so known for their opening.
Okay.
I think because Bond is so, but kind of like the first one, it's like, I'm making popcorn, which builds up. This one builds up into a movie in a movie theater.
Right.
So she gets, but what I like about it is when she keeps going, everybody thinks this is whole part of the movie.
Right. Part of the promotion. Yeah.
And once she gets up there, she yells something, and you can kind of tell that the crowd sort of slows down and doesn't say anything, and then they take off their mask, and the fun kind of gets sucked out, and then she dies, and Scream 2. And I thought that was a pretty good, it had a good opening.
Right.
So then.
Yeah. Then it sort of cuts to the college or university that they're at.
And what I liked about it, because I listened to this on the director's commentary, is that and I think it builds in a way where and what Wes Craven said was, there's a scene where so she's in bed, she's lying in bed, she gets a phone call, and I like how it starts, because she gets a phone call and says, hello Sydney, and he's like, what's your basically, what's your favorite scary movie? and she like, she's just waking up. Who is this? Who is this? And then she looks at she's got caller
Caller
ID.
ID.
Now this is 97, so like it's not like it's like on a screen, like Bell South screen.
Right.
And it says 555-144, and she kind of basically tells them that um, prank calls are like a felony.
Right.
And so she can but she's so used. I think she's sort of gotten stronger as a character from movie one.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
Yeah. I think she's just used to being harassed somewhat. I think it's probably from like the phone calls and stuff for people trying to mess with her.
Yeah, I kind of feel like, but I kind of feel like she was, but she has a roommate played by uh she has a roommate played by Elise Neal, who was in Hustle and Flow. She was in Logan, and you probably know her from, let's see, Our Dream Christmas. I don't know, but she plays her roommate, and I like that she's got a roommate and she's got somebody to kind of watch her, or not watch her, but kind of be with her.
Yeah.
And so so they kind of have a talk, and they turn on the TV, and the news report is about the events of what happened last night, where the students got killed
Right.
in the Scream thing.
Right. And then also the release of Sabretooth from jail.
Oh. Cotton Weary.
Yeah.
But he's always going to be Sabretooth to you, Jay, isn't he?
He is.
What do you think of that? I guess. So anyway, I guess I like kind of how that kind of builds up, and then she kind of says, "Where's Randy?" And he's like, "He's in film theory." And I like film. Then we get to see the film theory class, and that's where we see Randy is in film theory class,
right,
with Cece, played by Sarah Michelle Gellar from
Buffy
the Vampire Slayer,
yeah.
and
even I know who she is.
Yeah. And what's the Timothy Olyphant, who was the villain in Die Hard, Live Free or Die Hard. He's also Justified.
Gotcha.
He plays
Mickey, right?
Mickey, yeah.
Yeah.
And so they're in the film series, and they're talking about what I love about it is there's Scream 2. Oh, Scream 2. They're sitting in a horror, or they're sitting in a film class talking about sequels.
Right.
And he says, Randy says, what's the best sequel? And Randy says, sequels suck.
Right.
And Randy says, and everyone's like, come on. They're inferior from any other inferior from any other film.
Right.
And he says, well, what about I think he says, I've got it. What about Terminator 2?
Right. And
So,
they come up with a couple like counter examples.
Yeah, like Terminator 2.
They list Aliens,
which is kind of and then I like what CC says is someone's got a thing for James Cameron.
Right.
Which I kind of feel like is a kind of nice nod. I think they would have done it to this year if they would have remade Scream 2, or they would have done Scream 2 in like the 2000s. They'd probably say, you're probably an Avatar fan.
Avatar 2.
Avatar 2, yeah.
Right. Titanic 2.
Ice Cube, Iceberg.
Right.
So they're sitting there, and I like, I think that was kind of a nice kind of wink at horror films, and like they talk about, kind of the class wraps up,
right.
And I like what Randy says is he says, "So tell me, Randy, how would you, write your ending?" He said, "I let the geek get the girl," and he takes the banaka and sprays it in his mouth.
Oh right, yeah, because he's
And
sort of
because he
obsessed
sees,
with Sydney's character, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
because he sees Sydney, and Sydney's like, because she's already noticed that she's watched the news
right.
that there's the
Murder.
murder that happened.
Yeah.
So anyway, and so she's like, go. So she and Randy are talking in the courtyard, and she's like, you know, Randy, it's happening again,
Um,
and she's like, and Randy's like, kind of reassures her that no, it's not. Bad things always happen to people in the movies, killings, stabbings, things like
right.
that.
Yeah. And then I think at this point we see the first glimpse of Sydney's boyfriend, right?
Cindy's boyfriend, who's played by Jerry O'Connell, who
Uh,
was. Did you ever see Stand by Me?
I have not,
But he's the fat kid in Stand by Me.
okay.
And he was in
He looks very good in
Kangaroo.
this movie.
He was in Kangaroo Jack, and he was in. He's kind of had like he's kind of one of those actors who sort of he's kind of that guy. He kind of became that guy, not really a leading man. Jerry. Okay, he was in. Sliders. Did you ever see that movie?
It's like about hamburgers or
I don't know. I don't think so. I think it's about like time travel. He was in Billions. I mean, he played the voice of Superman in Justice League. Justice League Dark Apocalypse War.
okay. I have
Or
not
Justice
seen that
League
one.
Dark Apocalypse War. He's voiced Superman in Batman Hush. He was in The Death of Superman. He voiced Superman in The Death of Superman, which you can find on HBO or Max. So he's kind of gotten a career doing a lot of voice work for DC. He was in Veronica Mars. He's kind of an actor that just is sort of. Oh, he was in Obsessed with Beyonce Knowles. And I knew him from Kangaroo Jack. That's where I saw him from.
Okay.
And he was in, I think, Jerry Maguire was another film he was in.
Gotcha.
So he's kind of had, but he was in Stand By Me, and he played the fat kid.
Okay.
And it's kind of one of those things where he's gone from like just chubby guy, this chubby guy to like this super like hunky guy.
Yeah, he was like the swan transformation.
Yeah. Exactly. So
I think at this point we sort of get introduced to him, and we sort of see Randy doesn't like
kind of
what's
Derek.
his Derek. I can't remember his name.
Derek.
And I think, and then they sort of go out to the quad, whatever, and they see like a news van is pulled up, and then
we get to introduce back to the series Courtney Cox's character,
right,
Gail Weathers,
right, the reporter
lady, and they're kind of like, Gail Weathers, what did you do? And they're like, what's Gail Weathers doing here? And she is basic, and they kind of like, I think Sydney says, be nice, she saved our lives. Remember from the events of what happened in the first one.
right.
So I kind of like how, and then Dewey is kind of walking around. He's kind of, I mean, it is kind of a scene where he is very awkward looking, like kind of, because he's by himself and he's kind of walking around.
Yeah.
And Sydney goes up to Dewey and goes, Dewey, what are you doing here? And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, I heard about the murders that are happening, and I wanted to make sure you're okay.
Yeah, sort of at this point, around this point in the movie, I start labeling each new character that came on the screen. I was like, oh, that's the killer.
That's the killer. That's the killer. That's the killer. Because you haven't seen this one.
No, I hadn't seen it before, so I just said
like,
every new character was the killer.
That's
so
the
I had
killer.
to be right.
Because I think that's what makes Scream pretty good. Like once you know who the killer is, you can kind of go, okay, For me, I have to kind of watch it twice or back to back to really kind of understand the killer. Like not the killer, but to understand kind of like, okay, watch it the first time. Oh, it's him. And then you watch it again and go, like, okay, is
See the
that him
clues.
or that's him?
Right.
That's her, we'll tell you who's really the killer coming soon. Um, and I like that, but you can also see that Derek kind of does get a little when she hugs uh, Dewey. Derek did kind of get a little bit jealous. Not jealous,
I
but
can't. I think
maybe
he's just
maybe more
ass.
possessive or something.
I don't know. I can't remember exactly. I don't know if I got that vibe.
Well, I mean,
I
I
think
think
Derek was almost they sort of portrayed him as like the almost like the ideal.
the ideal
And
boyfriend.
so except later on they
Well,
cast some suspicion on him and
well,
stuff.
you can kind of tell that there. I mean, I like to kind of since we kind of get Derek in this one.
Um,
Billy Loomis is the boyfriend in the first one,
right.
and how he was a lot more creepier.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a lot more creepier than Derek.
Right.
We're not, you kind of could go like, oh, he's the killer. He's the
Yeah,
killer.
he was
And you go,
intense.
he was intense, yeah. And Jerry O'Connell, Derek, was
he's sort of more like a
himbo, yeah,
type character. Yeah.
yeah. So she hugs him and says, "Oh, what's been going on?" And he's like, "Oh, I've just been worried about you since the murder at the movie theater. Everything's going on." And she's like, "Oh," and they have a really nice talk where you can kind of tell that she's been, she's trying to get her shit together. Well, I mean, like, what do you do after you kind of go through the events? And she's like, she and David Arquette have a talk, and it's a really kind of, you can kind of see that that Dewey is sort of her surrogate big brother.
Yeah, that's what.
But she kind of got in the first one too.
Yeah.
Especially like, and I think in the fourth one, Dewey mentions Veronica mentions his sister Tatum, and like this happened to me and my sister.
Right.
A couple years, 20 something years ago, kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. And then trying to remember what else. Then sort of Dewey sort of tells off Gail Weathers, right?
Gail's kind of like, and Gail's sort of like, I'm gonna get the scoop, and everything's gonna be great, And you can tell that they didn't doll her up as much as she was in the first one. She was more natural, her look.
Okay, I can't remember.
More natural. Well,
Gotcha.
You've
seen it multiple times.
I've seen it multiple times, yeah.
Right.
So I'm a little bit more of like now, and it's kind of interesting that it's kind of gotten a little bit watching it multiple times and watching it now. It's gotten me fresher.
Right, and then the biggest I think red herring they have that also shows up is Cotton.
Cotton Weary.
Just got out of prison.
Cotton Weary, who is played by
Sabretooth.
He's actually Donovan something.
No, I don't know
TV
his name.
series. I mean, he's played by. Let's see. Oh, I got it. He's played by Liev Schreiber, who was Sabretooth. His other works include he was in Manchurian Candidate. He was in Ray Donovan is a show he was on from like 2013 to 2020. He did a voice work for Simpsons. He was in Dateline. He was the voice of Wilson Fisk in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
Okay, I don't remember that character off the top of my head.
Oh, it's the bald guy. He was in the big bald Kingpin.
Oh, Kingpin. Okay.
I'm sorry, Winston Fisk, a.k.a. Kingpin.
Oh, sorry, I didn't have his...
He was in Goon, and he was in Creed, to name a few of his films. But he's kind of one of those actors that, really became someone who is, you kind of go, hey, it's that guy, but he's you know him as Sabretooth in X-Men Origins Wolverine.
Yeah.
What do you think? So he comes and he's like, you can kind of tell that Cotton is trying to get his 16 minutes of fame.
Yeah,
he's 15 minutes.
Yeah,
of fame.
And he's like sort of like obsessed with it too. And sort of like.
And you'll find out in the third one how he's kind of he's really full of himself in 3.
Okay.
But we'll get into 3 in a little while.
Gotcha.
Maybe next, I don't know. We'll see. But anyway, so. And he's like, trying to do the interview, and she's like, Dewey or not Dewey, Cotton, I can't do that. I'm really freaked out right now.
Right.
And Cotton says, Gail, you're supposed to, we're supposed to be doing this interview.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think what was it? I guess Cotton didn't realize like Gail just like sprung this to Sydney. Like
Yeah,
I think
and
Cotton thought this was all
that was all
pre-planned.
yeah
Right.
pre-planned. Yeah, and Cotton, I think. Did you think Cotton was a red herring? I guess.
Yeah,
Still the first
yeah,
time?
throughout, but it's also sort of conflicted because then like you get a little bit of sympathy because like he didn't
He really
mean to
didn't
like
do
pop
well.
up and surprise Sydney. He
Well,
thought this was like pre-planned.
yeah, and well, I mean, like the other thing too is they framed Billy Loomis and Shaggy framed Cotton. Remember?
Right.
So you kind of could tell. Well, he might not be it. Why would he want to?
But he was in prison, so
Yeah.
maybe it was him.
Yes, maybe. Um. So, so they have an interview. She walks off, and he's kind of like, "Gail, get me my interview." So, and Gail has a cameraman. What do you think of him? Because
I liked it. He added like some humor and like
because he is kind of the comic relief.
yeah, but yeah, and it was like sort of I'm just gonna leave. He's sort of like his refrain like when stuff's getting scary. He's just
Yeah, well, he's not. Remember, this is her second, cameraman, and
Right.
there is that line where she says, "I know what happened to your first cameraman," because he got his throat slit
Right.
in three or in two in
And
the
first one, right? Yeah.
and I kind of thought that he was kind of and there is that trope
Uh-huh.
oh, I know this, the black guy dies first, kind of there's
Yeah.
kind of a
Yeah, that's been made
horror,
fun of a lot.
yeah,
Like,
kind of, and that was sort of the big thing too. But when you look at it with what's his name, Omar Epps, I thought that was a pretty good kill. I mean, first the black guy gets killed,
right. And
kind
then
of
speaking of tropes, I think that after this scene, they move on to the party scene, which
party scene, which
Right,
I've
is in-
always, party scenes are always kind of like, was it the party scene?
yeah, I think they move on is because they're throughout this whole movie they're trying to get like the
Oh,
sort of
it's not a
the
party.
sorority.
It's a sorority mixer.
oh sorry, it's not a party, it's a
No, it's a
sorority
sorority
mix.
mixer.
Oh, so not a party.
Because in the first one it was a party, and the second one it's a mixer where she's like, "Come on, Sydney, join us." And I like how the way that they're like the Gamma Kappas, or I can't remember what
I can't remember what they are,
but like how they're sort of like sorority girl esques, where they're like, "Oh, oh my gosh, we'll tell you," kind of like really prissy, not prissy, but kind of very kind of that
same trope, sort of like the plastics, but
yeah.
but there's also like a hint of like sort of I got a hint of creepy, like maybe it's like they're like all behind the murders, like
yeah,
too,
yeah.
like,
Well,
creepiness
that's
or
interesting. That's
Yeah.
interesting. I because I guess I was watching it and I was like going, I know who the killer is. I've already seen this movie, but like you're
I was thinking every new character came on, I was like,
he's
oh,
a killer. He's a killer.
Yeah.
I kind of liked what they did, but I liked where this because I feel like you're right. I mean, I didn't really kind of notice that there's sort of a party scene, and we get sort of like the scene where she's like, and you can kind of tell that Nev Campbell or Sydney doesn't want to be there,
Yeah.
and so she's kind of, and I like her, so she's kind of wearing a blue, kind of a blue, like a jeans colored jacket.
I can't remember.
Oh, anyway, but I like it where she's kind of like, the party in the first one was the climax of the movie, and in this one you kind of thought maybe that would be where the climb or but I like how this is where she's sort of reintroduced to Ghostface.
Right.
Because she's about to leave the party.
Yeah.
And
Well, I guess sort of while the party going on is that we cut over to Buffy.
Buffy. Oh,
Right,
yeah.
because-
Buffy. Silver
yeah.
Sister. So Buffy's there. Sarah Michelle
Well,
Gellar.
Remember, Buffy's in a different. It's like it's sort of Buffy's sort of like the house sitter for a
The
different
house sitter.
sorority.
She says she's sober sister.
Yeah, it's like it's sort of like they have a party in one sorority, and she's sort of
Right.
watching another sorority house,
Right, and
and sort
another.
of like
I think if
babysitting.
that sorority calls for a ride, she sort of
Yeah,
kind of gets them
yeah.
home, kind of thing.
So you sort of
She's
cut.
like she's like the Uber,
Yeah,
the kind of thing. And so she's sitting there watching TV, and I like what she's on the couch, and she's flipping through channels,
uh,
and they're talking about like I guess some soap opera. Oh, he dumped her a long time ago, and kind of thing, and she's like, yeah, she hangs up the phone, and then ding, ding. Hello, hey,
it's the creepy voice.
this is the voice. This is Mojo Jojo.
Yeah, they sort of go through the same thing. Where like,
But it's sort of like I like how it's different.
yeah, it's a bit different, but it's still sort of the same thing where it gets sort of creepier and creepier.
Yeah, but it kind of builds. I mean,
Yeah.
the first one, it kind of built like, what's your favorite scary movie? And she's like, it's all this, the way, Drew Barrymore's character Casey is a lot more really energetic. Not energetic, but she's very much like, really kind of like I'm making popcorn. Kind of naive. And when in the second, like when Sydney gets the first phone call on the first one, she's kind of like, "What's the point? They're always going through the window when they go into the front door. When she goes to the window, going through the back door or something like that."
Yeah.
And what I like with Cece is Cece sort of goes, it's more like, "Hi, this is the killer," or "Hi, what you doing, Cece?" And she's like, "Oh, I'm sober, sis," And she's like, "Ted," and she thinks it's her boyfriend or
Yeah,
like
who's drunk. Yeah.
boyfriend or some one of her frat friends that's drunk, and she's like, "Ted," and then she's on the phone with another girl, and they're talking about kind of the soap opera show that they're watching. What do you think of? Was it kind of interesting now that we did a Buffy the Vampire Slayer to be like, because like Sarah Michelle Gellar to me, I always know her as when I first knew her as Daphne in the Scooby Doo movies.
Okay.
And well, I mean when I first
Right.
and so I kind of knew her. I knew her as Buffy,
Right.
but to see her in this horror,
Yeah.
kind of as a teen, kind of a teen queen kind of thing.
Yeah, I like this scene because she sort of, sort of gets harassed through the phone, and
Yeah.
then like she gets, scared and
But
scared,
it builds up,
and then she's like hearing noises, and then it turns out it was like one of her
one of
sisters was in the house.
The sorority sisters show
Right.
up, and she's like, "Oh yeah, I just came to pick up my, my keys. Oh, I'm sorry, you scared the hell out of me."
Right.
And then she's like,
And then like I think then the phone rings again, and then the sorority sister picks it up, and
she picks it
and
up.
then the ghost or whoever the killer says it's Ted.
It's Ted, and she's like, "Hey, it's Ted. It's for you." And he's like, "Ha ha 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 ha! This
Right,
isn't
and
Ted."
sort of as the other sorority sister leaves, Ghostface slips into the house.
And I
Yeah.
like that. I like how it works. Well, I mean, that shows you that. I mean, there's always two killers.
Right.
Maybe. Well, I guess this came out 25 years ago. You probably.
I can't remember for sure if they like showed him holding a phone.
I don't remember.
It happens really fast, so I don't know.
Well, see, yeah, it's kind of. I think it's sort of like but so she talks on the phone with Ghostface, and then Ghostface, pretty much.
I think he says something that makes her think no, like he like heard exactly what she said, and so she tries to like go out and call campus police from outside the house, but
And then of course because
she loses connection.
loses connection. Because remember, guys, cell phones were still flip phones at the time.
Well, because she had a wireless
Wireless
house phone,
That's
not
right,
a cell
that's
phone.
right. Which kind of makes the kind of builds up the tension if you think
Right.
about it.
So she keeps trying to call and then can't get reception, so he takes like a couple steps into the house to make the call, and that's when
and then it's like campus security,
and then
and then
I
she
think
hangs
the
up.
chase starts. Yeah.
And then, what and I liked, and so she like, hold on, pause it. So Cece's getting chased, and she is
Sort of make the way up the stairs.
up the stairs,
Right.
but like I like how it's not like in Scream 2 where she kind of like does all the tropes. Says she's gonna, she knows what all the tropes are and just does it sort of, kind of mentally.
Right.
So she basically, she runs up the stairs, and I think Ghostface chases her.
Yeah. Eventually catches her and just sort of stabs her and
Stabs her. Oh no! And then she
throws her off the
she's
balcony.
in the attic. She's in the attic, right?
Yeah. I guess they sort of like tackles out to like a balcony. Area.
Balcony.
Yeah.
Yeah, balcony, and stabs her and then throws her off.
Yeah.
And then the campus police come.
Right.
Meanwhile,
it sort of cuts to the party, and then they get the news, and so everyone leaves.
They're like, they come out and they go, "Hey, police cars are outside. We should probably investigate."
Right.
Or not investigate, but say what's going on at the Gamma
at the other
sorority house.
Delta.
And
Greek
then
letters.
she's, I think, does. And then Jerry O'Connor and Derek and Sydney are at the sorority house. Or Derek,
I don't know. I don't think they get there because they're about to leave, but Sydney's like, "Oh, I forgot my coat."
And then she gets the phone call.
Right.
And the phone call is like, "Ring, ring. Hello, Sydney. What's up, girlfriend?" And she's like, "It's time to play a game." And then she's like, "Who is?" She's like, "It's been so long." Kind of like there's sort of a there's a connection since it's a sequel.
Right.
If you look at the first one, it's sort of like it's slowly like, oh, I know, do you want to die like your mother? Kind of. But it doesn't. It builds up. But I kind of look at it as she basically. So she gets the phone call, and he's like, "What's up, girlfriend? It's time to play again or something." And she's like, "What do you want?" kind of thing. And then she hangs up on him. Right.
I can't remember the exact details, but
Yeah.
sort of Ghostface sort of like, shows up for a bit, and then Derek like gets locked out, and he's like trying to break in the front door.
So does Derek?
And then
is
suddenly,
this where Derek gets.
he then suddenly.
Like I remember, like she gets the phone call from the Ghostface, and then
she's like going to the back door, and that's where Derek shows up. And then he like runs in to go get Ghostface
because she thinks Ghostface. He sees Ghostface run across the room I can't remember.
Can't remember exactly. I think the main thing was like you didn't see Derek and Ghostface at the same time.
So there is kind of that sort of pulling you.
Yeah, you sort of like have him like run in, and you just sort of hear like a struggle, and then like you just see him with like cut arm.
And he's like, "It's nothing," and it does, but it's not.
And then I think Dewey shows up next, right?
And Dewey shows up, right, and sort of chases him out. But if you kind of remember in the first one, I'm gonna kind of because it's her boyfriend in this one. You remember she's hugging Billy, and Billy's phone comes off, and kind of like, what are you doing with the cellular telephone, kind of thing, and I kind of liked how you kind of were like thinking that that might have been Billy, or not Billy, that Derek might have been the other boyfriend is now the other
that
killer.
sort of happens a lot in the next scene. I think where they're at the hospital, and like there's like. Because Dewey's suspicious that because he's like a pre-med that like the cut missed all the major arteries and nerves in his arm.
And he's like, and you can kind of tell him that Sydney is like going, or it's not Sydney, but yeah, you can see that Dewey's a little bit like, that this is that
suspicious.
This
and
is
then
kind of suspicious.
The boyfriend Derek's also suspicious that Dewey for like just showing up suddenly as well.
Well, Dewey you can kind of tell that when Dewey shows up. Earlier, that Derek is a little bit more concerned.
Right.
That he's macking on my girl, or not not really that. That's what he assumes. Maybe not assume, but he's very kind of possessive of Sydney, don't you think? Derek is.
Oh no, I didn't get that.
Well, I mean, I kind of got that, kind of like
I think I feel like Derek gets a lot more hurt when Sydney starts to, because she starts to, get, you know,
right.
just thinks that, oh, what if Derek is the killer? Is
Yeah,
when
yeah,
Derek
yeah.
gets
And
upset some.
I kind of saw that Derek, and so anyway, at the hospital, and did the hospital remind me of the scene where Billy? I mean, I kind of been kind of putting like kind of this. I mean, I kind of see kind of the way the first one was sort of like Billy gets arrested and he's talking to the chief of police, and it's kind of that hospital scene kind of reminds me of the same thing. So he's getting his arms wrapped up, and it almost missed the bone.
Yeah, it just sort of was like more of just a flesh wound.
Flesh wound.
Yeah,
It's almost a flesh wound.
yeah,
Um, and and Sydney sort of is kind of with him and but
she's starting to doubt, like
she's starting to doubt her. I kind
like
of felt like
Derek,
she's
yeah.
kind of starts to doubt Derek.
Right.
Um, and she's like, Sydney, when she starts to doubt Derek, and
Right.
kind of like you can kind of tell that Derek's like, come on, but he's not as. You can kind of tell that it was kind of like Dewey's the killer, not Dewey's the killer, but who was in the first one? Like Skeet Ultrich's character, Billy. Billy seemed like, okay, he's creepy enough, or he seems creepy. Dewey
Right.
I always kind of felt like Derek kind of was like a red herring.
Yeah.
Kind
But
of.
I guess you never know. And
Yeah.
then I think what happens in the next scenes? I think we got the Ghostface calls. I think it's Dewey, the Gale, and
Oh, they're in
Randy
the.
are all together.
So they're in the
Quad, sort of.
No, they're outside in the quad, and they're talking, and then ring, ring. Randy picks up the phone and says, "Hello, Randy," and Randy is like saying, "Oh, it's the killer," Did he see? And he kind of says something like, "What you been up to?" or something like that. I can't remember exactly the dialogue, but it was something like, poor Billy, poor. I can't remember.
I can't remember. Roughly, it's sort of like they have Randy sort of stays on the phone, and then Gale and Dewey sort of run around the quad looking for someone on the cell phone.
And he's like, and I like what Randy does is he's like, Randy pretty much he's like, oh, so what kind of serial killer are you gonna you gonna be Bundy, or all these serial names of the character. You've got nothing, and of course they make a joke of O.J. Simpson.
Right.
OJ, you can't, there's nothing. And he's like going, Billy was just some, some punk, and
he
just kind of like
insults
insults the killer. And then so Courtney Cox, Gail, and they're looking for the phone, and what I love is there's also a red herring, another red herring, the reporter played by Roseanne's sister,
right?
And she always comes in at different moments,
right? Sort of being an obsessive fan of Gail Weathers.
Yeah, and I think she comes in when they're looking for the cell phone call. And she says, oh, what are you doing? It's like, I can't talk right now. I'm still, I'm looking for the phone. And so there's people calling all over the place for the cell phone, for like the phone. And I like how Randy just starts to just badmouth the killer. And then he keeps kind of walking towards the
news van.
Yeah. And at the news van opens up, and Randy's thrown in and gets in a struggle and stab. And there's a documentary on, I can't remember what these guys did. It was like right around the time the fourth one came out,
right?
Called Still Screaming.
Okay, I haven't seen that yet.
And one of the things they talked about was I think Kevin Williamson, who wrote the screenplay,
Yeah.
um, wrote the screenplay. Said that was the hardest person to kill was Randy.
I know. I was surprised they killed him
Oh really? Yeah. I mean, I kind of felt like
because
the,
he was sort of like their like
but
meta film analysis voice.
I liked how they. I mean, at least he gets a good death.
Right.
What was your favorite? I mean, we'll talk about it once we kind of finish the plot, but
Yeah.
we should go in and talk about what our favorite kill scenes
Oh,
were.
that's true. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Trying to think what else.
so he goes. So he's gets to the van. The van opens up. They drag Randy in, and the killer just stabs him. And you don't really see any blood on in the windows or anything. But then Gail and everyone finds Randy's bloody face,
Right.
and she screams, "Ah!" And Randy, so Randy's dead.
Right. And then they give another red herring where they get a close up of like a black boot, and
Black
then like
boot.
the cameraman comes out wearing also like black boots. Yeah.
And it is and I can't, it was I can't I'm trying to remember his character's name.
And I think this is the point where he like says he's done, and
yeah, it's
he does the smart thing and just sort of walks
walks
off.
away. And he's like, his name is Joel.
Okay.
Who's played by Dwayne Martin,
Okay.
who you know from The Faculty, and he was in L.A.'s Finest with Gabrielle Union from 10 Things I Hate About You. Anyway, he says, Gail, I've been reading your book because Gail's written a book. Did we talk
Right.
about the book?
Uh,
Did we mention the book?
I think we did because we had talked about the movie that she put out.
She wrote the book that was based on Stab.
Right.
And so Joel has been reading the book, and he says, "Look, I know what just happened to your other cameraman who got gutted. I'm out of here."
Right.
And of course, it's the film. Not theory, but the film cliche that the black guy always dies in a horror film.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
that
I think
kind of
we
thing.
mentioned that earlier.
And so he's like, "I'm out of here." So she's like, "Joel, what are you doing here? What are you doing? Come back." So Joel's out of the picture. We don't see him.
Yeah, he sort of drops his bag.
He drops his bag and leaves.
Right.
And then Randy. So let's see. So
You can't what?
I'm trying to think what happened.
I guess that's sort of for Gail and Dewey, like they're sort of it's a side story, and then on the Sydney side
Sydney
story,
side.
we have like the little.
Sydney's at drama class, right? Are we there yet?
Yeah, this all happens this sort of day.
Okay, so she's at drama school.
Yeah, it's sort of. I guess I'm trying to remember the scenes with Sydney today. She has like sort of like the lunchroom where Derek does the
So
song.
you want to do that one first, and then we'll go into the drama?
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah.
So she's at the lunchroom or cafe or student eating facility, and she's sort of sitting there. She's sitting there eating lunch, and she's with her roommate, and she is kind of having a meal, and then both Timothy Oliphant's character and Derek and Mickey
Right.
show up, and Derek starts to serenade her, or do they have a conversation about something first?
Not too much, because I think we might be slightly out of order, but he sort of does a little serenade song to try to get back in her good graces.
Kind of reminds me of,
or to soothe her nerves a bit. Yeah.
no, it reminds me of the "I Love You, Babe" from 10 Things I Hate About You. Remember when she sings that?
Yeah. I think Sydney also has some like bodyguards after.
Yeah. So the bodyguards are there.
Yeah.
And because there's a scene where Derek is trying to get her alone just to be boyfriendish, and she does ask him, or he does ask her, "Why are you have bodyguards, hanging out with you?" And but she like does her research on the bodyguards that she has. He's like, "This guy's name's Matt. I can't remember, or bodyguard A is named, and he likes this and likes that." She does her
Yeah.
research on him, and then so anyway, at the cafeteria, they're kind of eating lunch, and then he starts and it kind of reminds me of that Tom Cruise scene in Top Gun, where he does like doo doo kind of. It is that, you know, I love you, baby,
Right.
kind of thing, and he starts singing, and I mean it's kind of. I felt like it broke the tension a little bit.
Yeah, it did.
Kind of like it's like, oh, someone got stabbed. Time for a musical.
Right.
Time for a music scene. Um, so I kind of liked. I mean, it's kind of a out of nowhere if you think about it. I mean, not out of nowhere, but it felt
A little bit. It's a bit
it,
out of place.
It's kind of out of place.
Trying to think what other scenes. We have the library.
So they're in the so after the cafeteria scene, what happened?
Well, she's in the library and she sort of gets like a creepy instant message thing on the library, and it was like then
instant messaging. Remember this?
But sort of, it was more like the person next to her says, anybody in this like came from inside the library.
Oh yeah.
And so her bodyguards start
looking around.
And at this point, Cotton shows up again.
Cotton always feels like the red hair, or like
right.
It's like you kind of can. And I think that's what makes, if you haven't seen it for the first time or for a long time, you're like, maybe Cotton's the one. Maybe
right. But this time Cotton is very like sort of very pushy and aggressive about.
Yeah. And
who's he trying to get? Diane Sawyer or something.
He's like he goes so Cotton's in the library, right? He's in the library.
Yeah.
So he's in the library, and he's like going, Sydney, we could have it. I could get you. I could get you Diane Sawyer. I think it was like the Today Show, Dateline. What was the other one?
I can't remember.
It was like Dateline, Hard Copy, just kind of all these Entertainment Tonight, all these kind of like things. I can make you a star, and I like how he's still fame hungry. He's sort of the fame hungry one.
Yeah.
But what I kind of think Cotton's all kind of like, because if you watch, because in the first one, Cotton really is sort of a no name. No, kind of like he just shows, because Cotton shows up, because we talked about how Cotton shows up to kind of get an interview with Sydney.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like he's still, I think in this one, he's fame hungry. And then in the second one, he's like, in the third one, this is where he kind of, this is the blueprints to see where he ends up in 3.
Right.
So he's kind of like going, come on, we could do, and he's really aggressive and says, come on, we could do dare, and she's like, Cotton, you're freaking me out. You're over.
Yeah, he sort of like grabs her, and then like the bodyguards come up, grab him and cuff him
and say, Sid, it was nothing. And I think this kind of, when you were watching it, did you kind of think maybe Cotton?
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Might have been the killer.
Yeah.
So Jay, so I'm trying
to think what else.
So where were we? So we're after the cafeteria, or after the library, she goes to.
I guess Sydney has one more scene before like the next big thing of like the play.
The play. So
yeah.
So okay. So she's in acting class.
Right.
She's in the auditorium, and the director is
Yeah, he gives like a very impassioned speech while
Well,
he's
no, no,
just
no, no. The director is played by David Warner.
okay.
David Warner, if you remember from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, he played Professor Perry, the guy that did the TGRI stuff. Because I was watching him and I was like going, God, he sounds like the guy from Ninja Turtles. He also voiced Ra's al Ghul in the see, he voiced Ra's al Ghul
Okay.
in Batman the Animated Series. He was also Professor Perry. He's done a lot of voice work, but when I saw him, I was like, um, yeah. So
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, so he was, and he was in Star Trek and Twin Peaks. He's kind of in every, but like when I saw him watching it this time, I was like, he sounds like the guy from Ninja Turtles. And I then I was looking through his thing, and I was like, oh, he's the voice of Ra's al Ghul. So he's talking to Sydney and says, "You're a fighter, Sydney. You know, you don't need to be scared, or use it.
Right. Yeah.
Use
That's his
your
main thing.
use your fear for the dark side, Sydney."
Right.
And she's like, "All right, I'll try." And then they're doing a play. Do you know what play?
Cassandra.
Cassandra, is that like a Greek Odyssey or something?
Was it? I can't remember exactly if it was from the Odyssey, but it's basically like one of the people from Troy had like visions of the future and knows what's going to happen but can't change stuff.
Oh, gotcha.
So it ties in a lot to the themes of the movie.
So she is like, which is kind of interesting. Well, the thing about Wes Craven Wes Craven was a philosophy major.
I didn't know that.
So yes,
Okay.
but anyway, so she is, so she's like, oh, darkness. She does the play, and it kind of what I like about it is the like she does her like acting, and she runs around, does her thing and runs around.
For some reason the play is a bunch of people trying to stab her,
which is kind of ironic.
Or,
and what I like about it is they're all wearing masks that kind of resembles Ghostface a little bit.
Right.
And she basically is running, she runs around, and it starts to get, I like how it builds up though.
Right.
Because it builds up where she's kind of like doing the acting and she's fine. And it's I kind of think of it as like riding your bike and scared you're going to fall over. Because it kind of builds that up. And then she finally falls over. She gets, she sees like, and I think she does see like a ghost face.
Yeah.
Run.
Do you think that was actually Ghostface or she was just seeing Ghostface?
I don't know.
Okay.
There's these guys that do a video called, or like they've done videos on who's Ghostface, like throughout the film. Is it Billy or Stu or that kind of thing.
Right.
And I haven't seen the sequel, the one they did on 2, but I was wondering if Ghostface, it's kind of interesting that she does see kind of images of Ghostface through the mask of these other guys. So she freaks out. And everybody kind of takes off her mask. Is like, what's your problem? Why'd you freak out? And she says that, so she runs away.
Right.
And so, we watched this like Friday night. So
I think this sort of ends with that Derek shows up to pick her up, and then he wasn't the one who was scheduled to pick her up from the theater.
Yeah, so she's
very suspicious about
that. She's kind of got. I think she's got sort of a here's who picks her up. Here's who.
Good. I might have gotten this. This could have happened maybe before the cafeteria part. I can't remember exactly, but that is sort of her 3 big scenes before the sort of next. The next thing is where sort of back to Gail and Dewey sort of pick up the film bag, and they realize the killer might be in the film that Joel had taken.
They got the camera, or they go into the auditorium or the film school section of the film school section, because
Right.
there's like a
Locked. Yeah,
projector.
and there's the schools on
Schools
lockdown.
schools on lockdown, and there's a
Right. Or
projector, and so they're kind of walking through, and they're in the film school or not film. You know what I'm talking.
yeah, they're sort of like an
They're
auditorium.
in the auditorium,
Right.
looking around, and then the lights turned off. And as the lights turned off, there's a film going on of the killer filming, or the of like Stewie. Was it Stewie? Not Stewie. It was Randy on the phone, or was that? What did they showed like the image of Cece, like the killer Cece.
Yeah, so
It was
they're
kind of like where what the killer was filming.
sort of watching film on a TV, and then I think they start like making out some, and then suddenly another TV on next to them
Yeah, that's where I
turns
was
on.
going with that. Yeah. So they start making out. So okay, yeah. So and it's on the big screen, and they see like, what is going on? Isn't that's Randy? That's Cece,
Uh,
and they're thinking it's the killer. Now, one thing that in 4,
right.
because I remember 4, he says the new thing that they say the new thing to do is the killer should be filming themselves doing the killing is the new thing, and the killer should be film, and that was kind of something that kind of after watching this for the 17th time,
Right.
I kind of was like, wait a minute, that kind of reminded me of kind of like foreshadowing of what'll happen in 2 sequels from now. Um, so they're kind of filming it, and I like before we move on, I think both Dewey and Gale sort of mature in this movie. Not mature, but like their character grows because like Dewey was kind of I could buy Dewey as sort of this like sophomore, new deputy, kind of a new deputy and real young and
Yeah.
inexperienced and stuff. Like that line in the first one where she's like, I've been 22 for two. I've been 23. I'm 23 years old. I was 22 for a whole year. Really kind of not mature, but sort of like kind of still, because he would have kind of like the, like his desk had a lot of like
I
fun.
can't.
I just
I can't remember the first one
I
that
remember
much.
details.
Gotcha.
But he does mature. He does feel like he's a little bit older, not older, but more mature in this
Gotcha.
film. So, so they go and check to see they see Ghostface in the film in the projector room, or
Right.
see his image, and he runs off, and then they go up there and they find the videos. They go into the projector room.
Yeah. Dewey runs up and tries to chase,
Chase Ghostface,
and then he's like coming back down, and he falls down the stairs, and then Ghostface runs after Gale.
Gale.
And then Gale sort of runs off through the school. And that's where they sort of get separated. And Gale goes into like the little sound booth room.
Right. Okay, the sound booth.
Yeah.
And so what I liked about the sound booth scene, so that's a good. So that's
Yeah.
so the sound booth scene is so she runs into the sound booth, and she's in the sound booth scene. Sound booth, she can hear everything, right?
At some points, yeah.
Or
That is sort of she sort of runs through and she's sort of like hiding from Ghostface, and then she sort of gets into like a
because
where like
because
Dewey and Gale can't hear each other.
Yeah, and Dewey's kind of like, what?
So she's like knocking on
the thing, and of course it's like sound. I mean, it's like soundproof glass,
right.
and she's like, behind you, and like Dewey's kind of like, what? Because Dewey gets stabbed in the back. Spoiler, and stabbed in the back, and she starts, and you kind of think that, oh, this is the demise of Dewey, and then, what'd you think of Dewey's kill or maybe kill.
Uh, not that it's just sort of like
Oh, I mean, he was in the third and fourth one, so it's not
okay.
like.
Well, yeah, just because he was like I can't. Does it look like he dies in the first one too? Or
In the first one, he's still there.
I can't
He
remember how bad he gets. I know he gets hurt really bad. I just
he
can't
gets
remember.
he gets more hurt. I think he gets more hurt in the first one. Like
Doesn't he get stabbed in the back as well. I thought.
I think
Because I thought they said in
so.
this one like they
No, no,
stabbed his
he
spine.
gets stabbed. He gets stabbed in the back. In the first one.
Right, and so it's somewhat
And I
comedic
think
because he gets stabbed in the back again in this one.
yeah. Oh, interesting. Interesting.
Yeah.
Um, I kind of and I liked how like they did it with the soundproof
Right.
wall.
Yeah.
I thought that made it really kind of dramatic and almost kind of with the music or the sound uh the soundtrack music playing
Right.
really makes the duna duna.
Yeah.
Um. So Dewey gets stabbed.
And then
Gail runs away.
yeah, Gail runs away, and then sort of she runs into Cotton again,
Cotton
who has
and
blood
she's-
on his hands.
Blood on his hands, and so you're kind of
And
thinking
he's like, "Oh no,
Oh,
I was
no.
just trying to help this guy that got stabbed."
stabbed, and Cotton, and she's like, Cotton, you did it. He's
Uh-huh.
like, Gail, I didn't do it. I may have blood on my hands, but I didn't do it. And Gail starts walking back. So this is really where kind of it starts to really pick up. Don't you
Right.
think? Kind
Yeah.
of they get closer to.
Yeah. And then so like as part of this, so like the police is sort of like locking down the campus. They're also going to take Sydney off campus to like a safe house location.
Yeah. And it's okay. So it's Sydney and her roommate. Did we talk about her roommate? She doesn't.
No, she doesn't play a huge part.
She doesn't play a huge part, but
It is one of the maybe the killers.
the killers. She's played by. Just to give you my. Hey, you may remember me from such films as. Her played by Elise Neal, plays Haley, and she was in Logan, Hustle and Flow, and let's see, Our Dream Christmas,
Okay.
to name a few. So, so anyway, so they get in the police or the agents that were watching Sydney
Right.
take them to the safe
Yeah.
the safe house, but as they're driving, Ghostface, I can't remember, I'm trying to remember exactly how it
Yeah,
works.
it's a little bit, we have sort of like a Derek is sort of like seeing them off, and then sort of like waves off the car, and then we see some like shrouded people, like they look a lot like Ghostface running through the woods.
Oh, they go through Ghostface to going through the woods, and and I think it's like a fraternity.
And then, yeah, it
that
turns out it's a
kidnap him,
fraternity
or
that grabs
that-
them.
that
Yeah.
grabs him, and so they grab him, they tie him to a chair, or tie him to like a wooden
It's like part of
plate-
the play for
plate-
Cassandra
plate
play.
for
Yeah.
Cassandra play, and they start throwing like beer or like dousing him with beer, and he is like, and he's like, no, and it's kind of out of nowhere if you think about it. Like the tone or because it builds the suspense, and then all of a sudden it kind of like
Yeah, it's just trying to make you think he was like captured
by
by
the
Ghostface,
killer,
but
yeah.
then it was the fraternity because
Fraternity.
he gave Sydney some fraternity
Fraternity,
letters
yeah,
or
I
something.
love you. This is my letter jacket. Here you go. And so they start dicing him with beer, and like and I mean, what do you think of, which kind of makes, this sort of gives us to think that Derek might not be the killer,
Right,
because he already got grabbed, and it could have been Ghostface.
right.
And so they
Yeah, they sort of like cut to that for a second, and then they sort of cut back to the car.
and so they're driving, and it's like, don't worry, Sydney, we'll
Protect you.
protect you. Oh no, like we gotta make it sound. Don't worry, Sydney.
I don't think they actually say that, but that's sort of like the vibe
kind
they're
of
giving.
The vibe they
yeah,
give. And then all of a sudden, a car hits them.
I think they're just sort of stopped at like a
They're
stop.
stopped at a red light,
Yeah,
and then
Ghostface sort of just like punches through the front windshield,
windshield and like just takes them
or
on
the
like a crazy
driver's side
taxi.
windshield. Yeah, and
Yeah,
sort of
they
slits the
slits the agents' throats, right?
right.
And then basically takes them on a crazy taxi drive.
Yeah.
Um, and what do you think of the kind of the because I feel like what do you think of the drive, the ride?
Uh, it was okay. Like it had, had the classic, like I think one of the agents like holding on to the roof of the car
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
type thing.
And I kind of liked how they did, like it worked, kind of the way they kind of we kind of are. It kind of now we're picking up speed in the plot,
Right.
which I feel like the first one really, the first one went from point A, point B to point C very gradually.
Uh,
This one went a little bit get to the point faster, don't you think? Or what do you think
yeah,
the
it was.
pacing was a little bit faster
Yeah,
in
because
this?
I think there's more stuff going on in this one. So yeah. Uh,
Um. So.
it's the big thing with the cab. Eventually, Ghostface sort of crashes the car and sort of impales the
Tells
last detective
the last
guy,
detective, and
and then he
so
sort of falls
they
unconscious.
knock off and they get unconscious, and I like that scene because then the tension kind
Yeah,
of
this is a
starts to build
very high tension
because
scene.
the tension starts to build because you see Ghostface
Unconscious in the driver's
unconscious
seat.
in the driver's seat, and her roommates.
And their only way out is to climb over him.
Or her roommate played by, or her roommates. Haley is like, "What are you doing?" It's like, "I want to see who the killer is,"
Oh, right.
and she's like, "I have to know," and she's like, "No, you don't, don't touch the mask, don't touch the mask." So she goes up to him, and she's about to touch the mask, and then, boop,
Oh, she bumps
honk,
the horn, yeah.
honks the horn, and I mean, I thought that was really
Yeah.
kind of the grab, because she didn't know if she, and then then the killer, then the ghost face wakes up, or I
Oh,
can't
we
remember.
don't. So they both get out of the car. They have to climb over him, and then like Cindy does one more time. Okay, I have to go back and see
Right,
who he
right,
is,
right, right.
and then he's not there.
Oh, he's not there. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And you don't know where he's at,
Uh-huh.
and then how did?
All right. So now, it's like the classic, like, oh, he's not there, and he turns around to look at her roommate, and then Ghostface grabs her roommate and kills her.
Yeah, I mean, but what do you think of the kill? Because I mean, that's kind of what you come
Uh,
to.
I can't remember the specific. It's sort of like that's sort of a suspected.
Yeah.
She like looks one way, he's not there, and she turns around.
It
And
kind of
she
reminds me of
kills that person.
uh, the cameraman kill in the first one.
Uh-huh.
Where he's just like gets the
Yeah.
killer's over here and that kind of thing. Um,
And then she sort of runs back to campus.
and she runs back to campus, or
And then we start to hear someone's like turned up the volume all the way at the theater. Like,
at the drama section.
yeah, the drama theater. Yeah.
And
For some reason, she goes in there
goes in there and
instead of the police.
yeah, exactly. And so she goes in there, and this is where the lights turn on.
Yeah, it's like
and
the
she's
final
walking
showdown. Yeah.
through the thing, and then what I love is she gets up there and does the killer reveal himself, or where were we? Because I know the killer does reveal himself, but I'm trying to build up the, like, I feel like she comes in and she walks in, and so the
Yeah,
so
she gets on the stage, and then someone starts messing with
Right.
all the production.
and the lights just go up,
The lights start flashing, and like the different sets sort of like are dropping
down, and then all of a sudden Derek drops down, kind of in like a cross
tied up to it with wearing one of the spooky masks.
spooky mask, and she takes it off, and she sees Derek. His mouth has got tape over it. He's like, he takes the tape off. She basically says, Derek, are you all right? And then all of a sudden, Ghostface shows up, and he says, I wouldn't do that if I were you. And she's like, huh? He says, don't you know history repeats itself? And he pulls out a gun or pulls out a knife,
Right.
and he takes off the
His mask.
no, he takes off the voice
Oh,
recorder.
right, the voice recorder. Yeah.
And you find out that his voice is none other than Justified himself, Timothy Olyphant,
Right.
as
Mickey.
Mickey.
Right.
And Mickey takes off his mask, and we find out Mickey's the killer.
Right.
Oh no!
Yeah, you can see the big like bruise on his head from the car crash.
I didn't notice that.
Oh yeah.
And he basically says that
He's having trouble without his partner,
Partner.
who he's like saying it's Derek.
Derek.
And so like Sydney backs off for a second.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
and Derek's like, it wasn't me, Sid. You can believe me. It wasn't me. And he's like, yes, Derek did it. Derek, and I like that kind of twist because or not twist. I mean, we'll tell you what the twist is, but I like how that's the other red herring that says like Derek is the killer, which would make sense because Billy was the killer in the first one.
Right.
So Derek basically says, "I'm gonna kill you,"
And then Mickey just sort of shoots him.
He just shoots him, and like you see he just shoots him, and he shoots him, and you can it's a pretty good kill shot.
It's gruesome.
Gruesome. So the blood starts running, and he's like, I like how Justified is basically like, it's gonna be great. Because he doesn't reveal yet who's the other killer. Right?
No.
He's going to be great. I'm going to be on, every single...
Yeah, he's like looking forward to the trial.
He's looking forward to the trial. Because you got to have a trial. Which kind of, like, I feel like the first one dealt with, like, being the sequel, being more into the movies. This one is sort of like, how do I be, like, how can I be infamous?
Right.
As a serial killer.
Yeah.
Because these times you gotta have a trial.
Right. And he goes through the whole monologue of how he's going to blame the movies.
Blame the movies. Because that's what you do these days, is you blame the movies. I'm going to be on, like, Sally Jesse Raphael and Donovan and, like, all these, like, 90s talk show hosts. Hard Copy and all these kinds of 90s talk show hosts.
Right.
And he's like, I'm going to be immortal, which is interesting because, they're more like the first one. I just kind of find it's interesting that the first one, they're more obsessed with being famous in the movie,
right.
Famous. And I mean, they're all want to be famous, even when you get to the Thriller, get through the when we get to the fourth one.
Yeah, so I guess Mickey does this whole monologue, and then...
What do you think of the monologue? Did you like the monologue better than you liked the monologue in one?
I can't remember the monologue from one.
I just remember the one. He's like, don't blame the movies, Sid. Movies don't make killers. Movies make killers creative.
Yeah. I think this was pretty good. I guess maybe that reminded me. Maybe I like the one in one a bit better.
I felt like one
was a bit more intense.
It was more intense, and I think because the first one, you had them stab each other to make it look like Sid's dad did it all.
Right.
And there was a little bit more to that. But what I liked is that you find out that and then he's like, and there's always got to be two killers, of course. I mean, that's what Justified says.
Right.
And you see, I bet he's coming right now. And then what's really cool is you see Gail, Courtney Cox. And what I like is you see Courtney Cox come out and she's like, Gail, and Sydney's like, Gail, you're the killer? Almost, it kind of throws off that red herring. She's like, and all of a sudden it's the girl from, it's the mom from Roseanne, or not Roseanne, but the aunt from Roseanne, who was the reporter.
Right.
And I like what the reveal is the reveal is she says, Mrs. Loomis, which, if you remember, in Friday the 13th. I felt like it was a nice homage to Friday the 13th
Right.
because in Friday the 13th, um, well, actually, it's a nice Friday the 13th, and in the first scene in Scream One.
Uh,
Remember in Scream One,
I was on the phone. Yeah.
she's on the phone with Drew Barry. He's on the phone with Drew Barrymore, and he says, name the killer in Friday the 13th. And we mentioned this on our Scream video, but he says, it was Jason. It was Jason. Nuh-uh. Jason didn't show up to the sequel. It's Jason's mother, Mrs. Voorhees. So if you think about it, it's kind of a flipperoo
Right.
from the first one to the second one.
Right.
And she shows up, and you find out she's the killer, and she says, "You took everything," or
Yeah, she gives her monologue where she's like, she found Mickey on like some like serial killers online, anonymous or something.
Yeah, and
it's sort of funny. Yeah,
which is kind of interesting, which is kind of funny, and like I like how he's like going, yeah, you gotta admit that the killer is, or you gotta admit that you do a couple things, you want to be, because he talks about how he wants to be infamous.
uh-huh.
And he's like, because like how and I like how they just kind of met and like,
Right.
and I think, and then it kind of questions me is how did he, what I'm interested in, like, it doesn't really explain how he and Sydney, Justified and Sydney, are connected, because you don't really see them really like together in a conversation.
Right.
You know,
except like briefly in like the film school,
film
like
class,
the film
yeah.
class. I guess her and Mickey don't meet up too much, but he's sort of just hanging around, sort of like in their sort of friend group.
Do you
a
think
bit.
he's more of? It's more. I think it's more, but I think you're also thinking. I think the film is also saying that it's focusing on Mickey, or mostly focusing on Mrs.
Yeah, because
Loomis.
he has a couple seconds out of that, Miss Loomis just shoots Mickey.
Mickey, yeah,
Right.
yeah. And because Mickey's just kind of like, I'm gonna be on. He's got the gun. He's like, He's telling his infamous why he wants to be famous story. It's like, I'm gonna be on TV, and they're gonna give me everything, and then she shoots him, and then it's kind of more of a standoff between you killed my little boy,
Right.
Or you killed my little boy. What did you think of the that reveal? Did you kind of?
I liked that reveal.
You liked it?
Yeah, that was I think that's my favorite reveal. I liked her sort of like.
Did you like the Gale almost thinking that it was Gale kind of reveal? Like, because this is your first time seeing it, right? Well, like, you kind of like when Gale shows up, and then
I guess just because of the scenes before, like where Gale's getting chased, I guess you sort of already know that
Gale's
it's
not
probably
really.
it's not.
Well,
Gale.
and then you also kind of go, wait a minute, she was in the fourth one and third one and fifth
she just spent like
and
half the movie
one.
running away from the
Yeah,
killer.
but like I kind of feel like that did kind of. I think if you saw it for the first time without knowing that there was going to be a third one or a fourth or fifth or sixth, I felt like that was sort of the thing. But so they monologue about being kind of infamous, and then want to wrap it up or kind of.
Yeah, so I think Sydney manages to run around for like a tiny bit, and then sort of like thinks she's like crushed Miss Loomis with like the fake boulders, which are probably made out of foam.
I felt like that was kind of like, it was a little bit more comedic. I felt like Mrs. Loomis wasn't as, I mean, when you had somebody like Shaggy in the first one, I felt like it was sort of like it was a little bit more comedic in this one than it was, scarier in the first one.
Yeah.
Or at least for me watching the first one when I was 6, kind of, when it first came out, it was a lot more scarier. It was a little bit more creepier.
Yeah. I can't remember exactly. Like if of course the foam blocks don't kill Miss Loomis, and then she like grabs Sydney again, and then sort of like we have a third party come up who is Cotton,
Cotton, and she's like, Cotton, what are you doing here? And I do feel
and
like
he's
they
like grabbed the gun from Mickey, right?
yeah, and he's like, he picks up the gun from Mickey, and you kind of, and I do like that kind of scene because you think, oh no, Cotton's the, I mean, you watch it, and I think watching it, if I watched it for the first, well, you watched it for the first time, did you kind of think, oh no,
A
it's
bit,
Cotton?
yeah, because now they start like
Kind
Miss
of,
Loomis is like arguing like, oh, she like put you into prison, and like
yeah.
Cotton's like, oh, that's a good point, and it's like pointing the gun at.
They kind of have a standoff.
Yeah, it's like, oh, that's a good point, and then Sydney's like, oh wait, I'll get you that interview.
I'll get you the interview, and he's like going done, and shoots Mrs. Loomis straight in the head, just like her son.
Right.
Or in the heart. Was it in the head?
It was in the head. Yeah.
And
Well, no. It was like in the like shoulder.
Shoulder.
Yeah.
And then of course, kind of like in the first one when Randy says, "This is when the killer wakes up from the killing, from the suspicious killer after being kind of thought to be dead," and then Billy, and she's like, wait a minute, give me that gun. She gets that gun. She starts shooting Mrs. Loomis.
Yeah, she just shoots her once in the head.
Once in the head. I just want to make sure. And
right.
Mrs. Loomis, doesn't she get up or not?
Miss Loomis does, but then Mickey gets up.
Mickey gets up.
Right, yeah.
And he's like, ah!
And then they both, I think Cotton and Sydney shoot
him.
Yeah.
It does feel like, I feel like this becoming a sequel, it kind of had, as the first sequel, it had to kind of play the same tropes as the first one, don't you think?
Yeah.
And I kind of was like going, this kind of reminds me of the first. Well, in Scream 1, didn't this happen in Scream? I mean, was that your kind of take on it? Or
yeah, it sort of, it had a lot of the same tropes that the first one had, but it was also sort of making fun of itself more as a sequel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, so she wakes up, or they dismantle the killers. Then
we, I think as they're sort of wrapping up the movie, we find out that Dewey is not dead after getting stabbed a whole bunch
of times
for the second
time. And he's just got flesh. It's just a flesh wound.
And then Gail gets in the truck with him,
and they drive off.
Yeah.
I kind of, and then they kind of have. I kind of noticed that they kind of have upbeat music at the end of this movie.
Yeah, because they do. Because like they're sort of like they're interviewing, like, oh, like are you like.
Oh, Sydney,
you're the hero. Are you the hero? And then Sydney's like, no, it's Sabretooth.
It's Sabretooth, yeah.
Cotton.
And Sabretooth is like, okay, yes, let me tell you about how great I am.
Right.
And then that's kind of where it ends.
Yeah.
And then you see, so we might see a third. Well, we do see a third Scream 3, but I guess it's time for our final thoughts. So, Jay, I do feel like the first one was so fresh, even for me.
Yeah, I think
that I felt like
the first one was better.
It was better, but I feel like the second one took what was good about the first one and maybe not amplified it, but
it was good. It was a lot better than I thought it'd be because I sort of think a lot about the same thing with sequels. They're like, oh, that's just going to be.
Well, it's like, isn't it like Terminator 2 pretty much? Or well, that's
Terminator 2 is maybe one of the exceptions. Terminator 2 is excellent.
But here's what I did like about it was that I did like at the film school or film class, they talk about sequels, and she says, they talk about Terminator 2, T2.
Right.
And I did feel like they were kind of, the movie Scream 2 was kind of winking at the sequel.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yeah, this one was not at the T2 level.
Not the T2. No, but I I felt like it was fun. I mean, I felt like I think with the Scream films, they got to have a good opening.
Yeah.
To really make it work. Um, and I feel like Scream 2, I would say that Scream 2, I'd give it, I feel like it's not as good as the first one because I think the first one is so fresh
Yeah.
for when it came out. Because the slasher, because you got to remember when Scream came out, the slasher was getting kind of boring. You know, you
Yeah.
had what, seventh Friday the 13th and maybe eighth or sixth Nightmare on Elm Street, and Halloween. I think six came out the previous
Okay.
year, so the slasher was just about to kind of like die.
Uh,
So I feel like two. I feel like the first one was so great that I feel like two had to build build up. Two had to build up its strength to make it work. But I feel like two is a pretty damn good sequel for what to kind of go for the first one.
yeah.
It was a pretty good. I mean, it was, it wasn't as great. I mean, I wouldn't say like you said. I wouldn't say it's like it's T2 is like the best. Because Terminator 2, there's something about like I want to talk. Terminator is so so interesting.
Yeah.
Um, so I liked it. I'd give it a 7 or 8, just because I think 10, 9, or if I had to choose between Scream 2 and Scream 2 and Scream 1, I would choose Scream 1, but I would rank 1 and I guess 2 as an 8. I mean, Scream 1 is more of a 9 or 9.5, and
Uh,
Scream 2 is probably an 8 or 7.
okay. Gotcha.
What about you?
Uh, yeah, I'd say probably
It's about the
somewhat
same
similar.
thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, like I feel like what makes Scream 2, I thought the killer reveal was pretty good, but the killer review was good.
Yeah. I did like
Reveal was
Miss
good.
Loomis. Yeah.
Miss Loomis, which is kind of a nice to Friday the 13th.
Right.
Um, I did like the the fact that I did like the first kill where it's movie theater.
Uh,
I liked how it kind of worked where the kills were kind of up to par.
yeah. I guess was the movie theater your favorite one?
Well, movie theater was my favorite. I felt like Randy's death
Randy. Okay.
was kind of like, when you look at Randy's death, it was kind of like, oh, I can't believe, it's sort of like the J.K. Rowling effect where you're like, I love that character. Why did you kill him?
Right.
And I do kind of feel like two worked aesthetically well, but I did feel like one was just a tiny little bit better. One just you can't beat the
Yeah.
original.
One was better. Yeah.
Which is I think it's true. It's just like but I'm not. It's not saying that it's that. So, what would you give it between as to what would you give?
I'd give it a 7.6.
7.6. Okay, I'll give it an 8 just to
Okay.
be nice.
Okay.
So guys, that was our spooky Halloween movie that we're talked about. Woo! Join us next time for what do you want to talk
I
about
think
next?
probably gotta do Mask of Zorro.
Mask of Zorro, which is gonna be part 2 of my Zorro film. So hope you guys enjoy. Thank you for watching. I'm Steve,
I'm Jay.
and this is Thriller in the night. Da, 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 da. Oh, and by the way, like and subscribe. Thank you guys. Have a good Halloween. Boo. Bye.